War never changes.
Hello Vault Dwellers, Caedo Genesis here, bringing you another guide for Fallout 1, this time going over character creation. For those unfamiliar with classic RPGs like Fallout, it may be a little daunting at first. In the hopes of making it a bit easier to digest, we'll be splitting character creation into several categories: special attributes, derived stats, traits, skills, and also touching on the perks a little bit, while adding a few character creation suggestions along the way. So let's begin. From the title screen, when you press New Game, it'll bring up a bio screen in which you can choose a pre-made character if you'd like. These pre-made ones are an option, but this is a character creation guide, so we're going to hit the character creation button on the lower left. Upon doing that, we are bombarded with a crazy amount of information on the character sheet. Before doing anything, you can take notice that clicking on any of the headers or words on the character sheet will show you a little description on the lower right alongside a Vault Boy. This works for basically everything on the character sheet, so if you are ever confused about what something does, all you simply need to do is click on it and it should give you a minor description of it. Some aren't as descriptive as we would hope though. Starting simple on the upper left is the name, age, and gender of your character. All this fairly straightforward. The only thing that has really an effect on gameplay, and only a minor amount, is if your character is male or female, like how they are addressed. And maybe who they're able to seduce if that's an option. Let's move on to the 7 special attributes. Consider the attributes the backbone of your character's build. If you want your character to have, say, a particular set of skills, or a certain playstyle, you'll want the attributes tied to those things. For example, if you wanted a combatant who would charge in, punch his enemy in the eyes, and run away all in the same turn, you would probably want a strength and agility built character, with a couple of perks that help that of course. Even though each of these start at 5, you can reduce them all to 1, and have 33 points total to work with. One tip before distributing points is you don't need to raise any of these to 10 because they can each be raised through gameplay by 1 point permanently. The permanent attribute boost guide is available also, and is linked to via the info card or the description. Starting at the top, we have strength. Really straightforward. Points to strength give bonuses to your melee and unarmed skills, your carry weight, your melee damage, and your base hit points. Even if you're using a melee or unarmed character, your strength shouldn't have to be any higher than 7, or even 6 if you get the Brotherhood of Steel implant that raises it permanently by 1. This is because power armor can give you those 3 remaining points of strength. If you're not making a close quarters oriented or big guns character though, do still keep in mind that all firearms have a recommended strength value, and if you're under it, it'll carry an accuracy penalty. Most rifles can be handled with a strength of 5, while pistols and submachine guns work well with 4. Perception represents your character's 5 senses. This modifies your character's first aid, doctor, lockpick, and traps skills, while also improving ranged accuracy and your character's sequence, which will be covered later in derived stats. Perception, of course, is more geared towards ranged users, and skill values can counteract a low perception if you're melee or unarmed. Regardless, I wouldn't recommend going any lower than 3, because you will still have to go up in experience level to increase those skills to counteract a low perception. In short, if you plan on using guns, go for above average perception. The E in special is for endurance. By definition, this is your character's durability. It modifies the outdoorsman skill, and like strength, your character's base hit points, but also hit points gained per level, your character's heal rate, as well as their poison and radiation resistance. Yep, very much so their durability in the wastes. Unless you plan on being in your enemy's face constantly, you can definitely get away with giving your character 3 to 4 endurance. Hit points begin to become somewhat less important towards the end of the game, since the enemies that are a threat to you can critical hit you for over 100 damage. Again, if you plan on being a meat shield, go for moderately high or high endurance, but really it's up to player preference. Fourth of the special attributes is Charisma, the notorious dump stat. It'll give sizable bonuses to your character's speech and barter skills, and a chance at special dialogue options, on top of the ones you would get from high speech. So there is a mild benefit to a decent charisma, but only really if you're going towards a socialite build. If you are going towards a pacifist character, which is entirely possible to do by the way, then you'll want an above average charisma or better. If you're not going towards that type of character build though, leaving charisma at 3, 2, or even 1 will still turn out just fine. Intelligence represents your character's comprehension and aptitude. It will give minor boosts to first aid, doctor, and outdoorsman skills, while giving major benefits to science and repair. More important than these particular skill boosts, though, is its main benefit, which is skill point gain each time you level up. The higher your intelligence, the more skill points you can distribute per level. So there's no reason not to have a higher intelligence, no matter the character you're playing, unless it is an idiot character, which, yes, that is a thing too. Not something I would recommend on your first playthrough though. The sixth attribute is agility, a rather important attribute just like intelligence. If you made a character with an agility under 5, you're not going to have a good time in combat. Each point you put into agility automatically distributes 8 points worth of skill boosts to small guns, big guns, energy weapons, unarmed, melee weapons, throwing, sneak, lockpick, steal, and traps. And that's just the beginning of it, because this is also for your armor class and the ever important action points for combat purposes. I would strongly recommend between 7 and 9 agility if you can afford it for your character build. Just whatever you do, do not go below 5. Last of the attributes is luck. Fallout 1 does tend to rely on the amount of critical hits a person can land in combat, so try to keep this one in the middle if you can help it. Each point of luck raises the gambling skill by 3%, while also increasing your critical chance 1 for 1, and increases your odds of special encounters out in the world map. A character could get along just fine having a low luck value, but there are some distinct benefits for having it as well. Those encounters I mentioned, some of them are really special. Let's move on to derived statistics, being derived from your base attributes, all contained in this middle-ish column. Your hit points, really straightforward, derived from strength and endurance, determine how much damage your character can withstand before dying. These faded out status effects can be ignored, as they have to do with main gameplay instead of character creation. Moving on down to the main derived stats, armor class is a combat modifier that reduces your chance of being hit, in other words, evasion. The starting AC is equal to your agility. Armor class can be further increased with perks and armor acquired throughout the game. Action points are the points used for actions and movement during combat in Fallout. Base AP starts at 5, and the rest are determined by your character's agility and future perks. If you want to take more actions each turn, you'll want more AP. Keep in mind that unspent action points aren't wasted, but instead go into your armor class at the end of a turn. Carry weight is expectantly your ability to carry stuff. This starts at 25 and is further modified by your character's strength and perks if you so choose. Melee damage is the bonus you get to both melee and unarmed attacks. It remains at 1 until you have a strength of 7, then increases until 10 strength, maxing out at 5 extra damage. If you are a melee or unarmed user, you can plan for this bonus melee damage later on in the game by means of power armor, which raises your strength, as well as the strength implant. Instead of evasion, damage resistance is your damage reduction when struck, and is mainly modified by the armor your character is wearing. Some damage resistance can be gained from perks also. When wearing armor, there are several damage types and numbers next to them displayed in your inventory. The damage types are fairly easy to grasp, but these numbers separated by a slash both resemble damage reduced from an incoming attack. Just keep in mind the first number is straight up damage removal, and the second one is a further removal of damage by that percentage. Poison resistance is obviously your resistance to being poisoned. There are only a couple of enemies in the game that poison you, and it can only be a lethal dose at early levels. Poison resistance is determined largely by your endurance attribute. Since antidotes can be gained early on though, this makes poison relatively easy to ignore. Radiation resistance is just like poison resistance, but for rads, another derived stat greatly determined by your character's endurance, but additionally your armor and related perks. A low rad resistance can easily be offset by Rad-X and or Radaway. In fact, there's only a couple of areas in Fallout that are irradiated. The downside of rads is that they don't go away like poison does, and need to be tended to for removal. Sequence is also known as initiative. It's the frequency in which your character gets turns in combat. If you have a higher sequence, you get more turns. This is mainly determined by perception. Healing rate, this one defines itself. The rate at which your character heals. 1 HP is gained for each healing rate point at the end of each day. If resting, this applies for every 6 hours. Endurance divided by 3 will determine your healing rate mainly, and it cannot go any lower than 1. Critical chance, the odds of you scoring a critical hit in combat. Critical chance is luck derived, as well as particular aimed shots, like for the eyes and the groin. If you play any type of combat character, critical hits are good. They're normally good. Moving on to traits. You may take 1, 2, or no traits at all. These add extra character to your character, giving you a benefit with a trade-off. Again, traits aren't required at all, so instead of talking about each, I'll talk about the ones regarded as most useful. Bloody Mess will show the most gruesome death animations when killing enemies in combat. You can also choose this for a bonus cutscene when you complete the game. The trade-off for a free attribute point is mild to say the least. Since small frame adds to agility, there's plenty of incentive to take this trait. The downside to fast shot is substantial, with a full removal of aimed shots. However, a 1-point reduction to AP cost combined with the bonus rate of fire perk later on will make numerous weapons in the game incredibly cheap to fire. Upwards of 5 times per turn if you have 10 action points. Bonus hand-to-hand attacks can make them even more ridiculous since melee and unarmed weapons already have lower AP costs than guns. A good-natured character has less trade-offs than you would think. Normally building a character only needs 1 or 2 preferred combat skills, whereas First Aid, Doctor, Speech, and Barter are all contextually useful during gameplay outside of combat. The non-combat skills noted get a 15-point bonus, while the combat skills get reduced by 10. You still get more skill points here either way. Gifted is widely regarded as the best trait to take. The skill point loss is substantial, but 1 point boost to all attributes is outstanding if you're looking to make a wasteland legend. Most of the point losses can be regained by reading books anyway. Now that you know the particular special attributes that help them, we'll now go into what each skill can do for you. Skills are your character's abilities that are used to actively or passively interact with the wasteland and its inhabitants. Each of your skill values affect your chance of success with that skill, and each of them can be raised to a maximum of 300%. These will be separated into 3 categories: combat, active, and passive. Starting with combat skills, these are your weapon proficiencies of all types. Increasing a weapon's skill will increase your character's accuracy with it. Starting at small guns, it affects your small to medium ballistic firearms, which includes pistols, submachine guns, and rifles. Large, bulky, hard-hitting ranged weaponry falls into the big guns category. It includes miniguns, rocket launchers, and flamethrowers. If bright beams or bolts are fired from it, it's likely an energy weapon. Included in the energy category are laser rifles and pistols, plasma rifles and pistols, as well as Gatling lasers and alien blasters. Unarmed governs your hit success with attacks from fists, feet, brass and spiked knuckles, rocks, and power fists. Melee encompasses all weapons meant for swinging, smashing, and stabbing. Among them are the cattle prod, clubs, knives of all types, sledgehammers, spears, and crowbars. The throwing skill is the oddball of the combat skills, as it includes things that are thrown which do little damage or a whole lot of it. Those considered for throwing are flares, grenades, molotovs, rocks, spears, and throwing knives. Moving into active skills, each of these are used to interact with objects and people in the wasteland. Your active skills can be easily accessed through the skill decks on your HUD or activated through the number keys 1 through 8. First Aid is your minor heal skill and is usable 3 times until your character needs a 24-hour break. Each time a character is healed this way, it takes a half an hour of in-game time. Expectantly, a First Aid kit will temporarily improve this skill if used. Doctor is your major heal skill, for larger amounts of hit points and for crippled limbs. Like First Aid, it can be used 3 times every 24 hours and requires half an hour each use. Keeping the water chip timer in mind, Doctor is more efficient than waiting and should be used first if you're going that route. A Doctor's bag can be used to temporarily improve your skill and is especially helpful if you have a crippled limb with low skill. Sneak is your character's ability to go undetected by non-player characters. To be effective, your character must be walking while it's active. Running will disable it. Coupled with Steal and Lockpick, this will assist you in trespassing and hopefully getting away with something valuable. Your sneak skill can be improved by an active stealth boy too if you find one. Lockpick can be easily the most used of the active skills. You're bound to run into locked doors and containers, so putting a few points into lockpick is sure to help you. A set of lockpicks can help by improving your breaking and entering, and have infinite uses unlike a doctor's bag. Steal is your character's ability to relieve non-player characters of their possessions, hopefully leaving them unaware. The general amount of skill will help tremendously, but keeping the NPC's facing, perception, and size of the object you're taking must all be considered as well. While there is no tool to help with stealing per se, getting your target drunk off of rot gut or booze will dull their perception, increasing their odds of a successful attempt. Also, as a side note, companions don't care if you steal from them, so it's a good way to manage inventory with your mule as well. Traps as a skill is often glossed over as it plays only a small part in Fallout, and traps are only a minor hindrance to the player, especially if they have decent armor. The trap skill doubles as passive detection too, and affects your proficiency of arming explosives. If you do decide to invest in traps, go for 90 to 100, as some require that level of skill to even be detected. This is not a required skill though by any means, and the player can get along just fine without investing any points into the trap skill. Science is mainly for use on pre-war computer technology, and in turn will be rather rewarding to keep at a higher value when checking out pre-war locations that have working terminals. Repair is your general handyman or handywoman skill, used for repairing mechanical equipment and machinery. This is the alternative to science, since there are occasions where either can be applied, so long as you have skill points in science or repair. Finally, there are the passive skills. These are the skills that get checked in certain contexts, and most of them simply make portions of the game easier for the player character. You know, kind of like how skills work in real life. Speech is your character's general prowess in conversation and interaction with others. If you want to get all you can out of the lore and dialogue in Fallout 1, a high speech score will reveal a good dose of both. Barter is your skill in the trade of trading. Fallout is a game about characters wanting or needing things, and if you have the means to get a discount for said things, that's good, right? In some respects, yes. Barter isn't a required skill at all though, but does make an acquisition of equipment less violent for sure. Gambling is seen as the easiest route for making money in Fallout, not to mention least risky. It's said that if you have a gambling skill of around 40, you can bet low values at roulette tables with a major chance of walking out with a profit. If money is troublesome for you, pump gambling up and let that cash flow in. After you save first, of course. Outdoorsman is your passive skill for surviving the wasteland in general. It's understandably low for a vault dweller at the start, but can help when it comes to saving that valuable time when traveling. If you're overly concerned with the water chip timer, a fair outdoorsman skill can help ease your mind. With everything in mind from the last 17 skills, your tag skills are 3 skills that the player chooses during character creation, and they receive a 20% starting bonus and double growth from skill points that are applied when you level up. When choosing your tag skills, it is recommended to take one from each category, combat, active, and passive, or choose 1 combat and 2 active skills. Tag skills will also help determine your starting equipment at the beginning of the game. Perks are special effects you gain every 3rd level unless you took the skilled trait, at which point you get one every 4th level. The extra detail that these can add to your Vault Dweller really let you specialize in the direction that you want. As a rule of thumb, any perks that simply increase skill values are usually a wasted choice since there's so many opportunities to increase skills already. For example, you can utilize the library in the hub for skill books, which restocks every time you open dialogue. And on a final note, like the traits section, instead of going over every single perk, I'll be going over the ones to look out for. So let's get into those perks. Awareness is a good first choice when hitting level 3, mainly for the sake of assessing your combat situation before jumping in. Instead of just telling you whether or not your enemy is injured on inspection, awareness will tell you the exact health values and weapons equipped to your target. In the strategy layer of any game, just having this knowledge can greatly increase your survival in a combat situation. For bonus hand-to-hand attacks, if you use melee or unarmed weapons at all to solve your problems, getting this perk will reduce the cost of all actions with these attacks by 1 action point. This is a must-have perk for any melee user. Bonus move gives your character 2 action points for the sake of movement in combat. Movement is important in a fight, be it for positioning or simply to escape to the exit grid. Better criticals comes as close as possible to promising bonus damage on a critical hit. And who doesn't want to blind enemies more effectively? Aim for the eyes, you'll see what I mean, but they won't. Bonus rate of fire works the same as bonus hand-to-hand attacks, reducing the cost of all gun actions by 1 action point. This is darn near required for anyone using ranged weapons. Action Boy gives you an extra action point. Since there's 2 ranks of this, you could top out at 12 action points if you go to maximize your character. That's a lot of actions per combat turn. Like bonus hand-to-hand attacks, Slayer is for melee and unarmed weapons, and will make each point of your character's luck equal to 10% critical chance. If you're running around with 10 luck, surprise, every one of your melee attacks is a critical. Sniper works in the same way as Slayer except for firearms. 10 luck is a 100% chance to critical hit with any gun if you take this perk. No wonder this perk unlocks so close to max level, huh? I've put together 3 examples of specialized builds for melee, ranged, and socialite characters, as shown here. You'll find more detailed versions of these in the description if you're interested. Now that we've gone over the entire character sheet plus a bit more, keep in mind that all of the information here has been compiled with the intent to help you, and isn't the be-all end-all guide of character creation in Fallout 1. If you have some advice you wish to add or found missing, please add it in the comments to help out your fellow Wastelanders. As per the usual, if you found this excessive guide useful, entertaining, or both, please do whatever it is you see fit to show that. And also, please consider supporting the channel on Patreon to help quality guides like this surface more frequently. Thanks so very much for watching. This is Caedo Genesis, holding out hope that you can save the vault today and the wasteland tomorrow.